everybody. Welcome to InPsightRadio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Happy week! Oh, the spirit of peace is here. I'm so excited. We're sitting here in the third week of November of 2019, and I am so excited to have the spirit of peace hit the earth. And the spirit of peace is a real spirit, gang. I mean, it would be here all the time, except we don't give it a place to be. We literally just, get curmudgeonly and we don't engage this spirit. Yet as we come into the holiday season, then we begin to feel more like engaging with this incredible spirit, and it becomes more and more fun, and we have more and more fun with it. And pretty soon we're feeling Christmas carols and holiday songs, and we're meeting up with family. And there's many people who don't have a lot of family or don't have family at all during the holidays, yet the spirit of peace is still with everybody. And I know that sounds like a real churchy thing to say, doesn't it? The spirit of peace is with you. But it's true. I mean, the spirit of peace brings hope. And hope is such an important component in the human race. It really is. And so that's what we're talking about today on the show. We're talking about why hope saves the world. Because if we're expecting something else to come in, if we're expecting fights to save the world, if we're expecting conflict to save the world, then we're kind of barking up the wrong metaphysical tree. What ends up saving the world is hope. And I talk to these angels day in and day out. We talk about all kinds of fascinating things. And in our conversations, they refer to hope oftentimes as something that's really more on the periodic chart of building. So when you look at the spiritual periodic chart of all elements and how we apply those elements, hope is a very strong element on the periodic chart. Except that it's right up there with love as far as one of the most dense spiritual vibrations that we have in terms of being a tool, a reparatory mechanism, a bridge builder, and a foundation. Hope, I can't even say it doubles, it triples, it quadruples as many, many, many things. And that's one upside, gang, that talking with angels has given me in my job, is this opportunity to really understand the spiritual physics of many emotions that we put out into the universe. And the many emotions that we have are pretty diverse. They're really diverse, in fact. So as we have this opportunity to go down the rabbit hole of why hope is going to save the world, then I have the opportunity to tell you about so many cool other amazing emotions on the periodic table of metaphysics that are innate to your DNA. And these emotions have vibrations, and these vibrations actually affect the ether sphere. And when those ethers vibrate, we literally get to see a completely different world on the other side of those ethers. We are creating this world by the vibrations that we choose to put into it, gang. I mean, this gets really Neo from the Matrix. I mean, we're going square on down the rabbit hole today, and I'm so excited to have you with me on this one. Because I tell you what, in my work with these angels, I have a huge opportunity to see what we like to call outcomes. We like to call those futures. And the fascinating thing about the future is that we build it on every single level. And this is hard for us to understand because many people are on the other end of circumstances or of situations. And, we don't have much choice sometimes as far as which situations have been dealt to us and what we're going to be working with at that given time. Many people, good people, beautiful people, are victimized in their life, and they didn't ask for that. Now, there's a school of thought that believes that we come into co-creation with all of our experience and whatnot. Yeah, we're going to keep it a little bit simple on the front end of this rabbit hole conversation. And it has been my experience to note that sometimes great people just get in the way of the train wreck of someone else's brutal lesson, and victimization happens. It's a thing. So We're not here to debate whether or not people bring on the lessons of victimization. I believe that I've noted that many times we don't necessarily bring it on. We just are beset with that very heavy energy signature of chaos and pain and woundedness from another person, and situations and things and actions are flung upon us, thus an individual being victimized. And it's really, in my observation with these angels, more what we do with that situation than why it happened. I mean, the whys are definitely important. Yeah, we come down to that space where we must ask ourselves, what do we do now that this awful, let's just say some awful thing happened to you in your childhood, in a work situation, in a marriage, whatever it would be, in a friendship. Something happens that is really just awful, and it's flung at you like a rabid frisbee flinging through the air. Have you ever gone hiking through a park that has a golf course? Frisbee golf? If you've ever gone hiking through a park that has a golf course, you run a pretty large risk from getting whacked in the head with a disc, with a Frisbee golf disc. And sometimes when we're cooking along in life, we get really beamed upside the head by many of those Frisbee golf learning experiences as we're cutting through the park of life. And those experiences of impact that may bring shame to us, or demoralization, or for children, really, who are victimized at a young age with physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, horrific things that little kid didn't ask to have happen to them. It beset upon them. It came upon them. Those breakpoint items are really painful instances that can challenge our sense of hope, especially when I have worked with children who have been sexually abused. And I mean, it's rough. And for those of us who have never experienced something like that as a child, we have such a gift of our childhood that we don't even realize what a gift that is. When you work with children who have been sexually abused, much of that innocence and childhood is taken away. All of it is taken away. And they're thrust into a whole different place of pain and woundedness and shame oftentimes, and not even understanding why it's happening to them. And when your parents, especially if the sexual abuse comes from a parent, when a parent or a friend of a parent or a family member brings that type of cycle of abuse onto a child, then it imprints upon that child that the very beings that are supposed to be there for you or holding you up or protecting you are the ones that are the victimizers. So there's really no hope of feeling safe in that environment for those kids. And I'm picking on a pretty heavy, awful thing that God bless all the babies that this happens to. It's awful when I look into the damage that sexual abuse can do to children and can do to adults that were children and never dealt with that abuse. So when we think about the concept of hope saving the world, it's very important that we pave the discussion with the fact that hope is hard to come by sometimes. And we don't talk about the grittier aspects of what removes our hope. There's a lot that can take our hope away. Just as we're discussing here, all of this heaviness surrounding sexual abuse, that makes it very hard to have hope that there's safety anywhere for a human being when that happens. Another way that hope is stolen from us is socioeconomic issues, poverty gang. I was talking to a friend the other day, and this friend of mine was talking about how bummed out they were. They didn't have as much money as they were going to have, in that year, and they were feeling broke and poor and all of these other things. And I mentioned to them that our idea of being broke and poor in the United States, though there are people who are absolutely destitute, living under bridges, broke poor, yet our idea of what being broke is in the USA culturally, really honestly, is more living paycheck to paycheck. That is the acceptable litmus, I suppose, for being broke or being poor. Now, there are individuals who are so socioeconomically challenged in this nation that being poor means there's no food on the table. Being poor, being broke, means that there's no roof over your head, or that you are wearing clothing day after day after day that is not getting interchanged out with other clothing and may not have an opportunity to be washed. Yet for most people, our battle cry in America is, oh, I'm so broke, I'm so poor, meh, meh, meh. And that means, gee, I don't have enough money to go on a vacation, or I don't have enough money to go out to eat as much as I want to, or I don't have enough money to, go on an exotic movie night with my loved ones. So really the idea of being poor or broke is really relative to people's personal experiences. And I had a very, very wealthy friend at one time. I have to tell this story really quickly. And my friend lost a bunch of money in the stock market. And my friend worked in entertainment. And this individual had aligned with another person who had encouraged them to invest in all this garbage. And when they did, it was kind of like one of those Ponzi scheme kind of things, So my friend loses a bunch of money. I was telling my friend, this just doesn't feel very good. And of course, we all want to believe we're going to make $1 million in 5 minutes. Right? So my friend invested in all this and of course lost, tens of millions of dollars. And they were left with about $2.5 million in their bank account. They had lost around $40 million. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, right? You have to imagine that when you're dealing with stocks and bonds and all these other things, that amount of money, that $40 million isn't even barely real. It's all stock money. It's numbers in a computer, yet on paper it says that you have $40 million. So my friend had lost this money to basically a con artist and was learning this lesson in hubris and in greed. So my friend was left with about $2.5 million. And by the way, I did ask my friend if I could tell this story someday, and my friend said yes, I could, because they hoped that other people would learn from it. So my friend came in just crying and crying and crying. And I said to my friend, what is going on? And my friend said to me, I am flat broke. And I said, well, how much money do you have left? And they said, I have $2.5 million. I have lost all hope that I will ever get that money back. Now by my standards, $2.5 million is a gajillion dollars. That's like a trillion million dollars. Okay. So I was trying not to be judgy, and I just stood back and I listened to my friend, and, my friend cried and cried. And of course was I had empathy for this person. Losing $40 million is a lot of money to lose. So I asked my friend, I said, may I ask you a question? I'm just curious, why does $2.5 million not feel like you have any money? Because that just sounds like so much money to me. Come on, gang. I'm a little gal who grew up in Montana. My mom and I, after my folks got divorced, and God bless my dad, he was, sending my mom through college so she could finish her degree, even though they were divorced. And my mom and I were living in the basement of my grandparents' house, which I thought was excellent, by the way. I thought that was awesome, living with your grandma and grandpa. And we had no money. We were eating. My mom was going back to school. I was on an assisted lunch program. The programs where they give the kids free lunches. And my grandma, in her infinite wisdom, told me to not tell the other kids that I was getting free lunch. She said, pal, you're getting free lunch, but what we're going to do is you're not going to tell the other kids, because I got real excited about it, right? I wanted to go to school and be like, yay, I got chosen for free lunch. And my grandma said, pal, you're not going to tell the other kids because they didn't get picked. And you don't want them to feel bad. So don't tell them that you got this free lunch. So that was weird. And I thought, oh man, I can't make the other kids feel bad. So every day I went to school thinking I was such a rock star with my free lunch, right? So we're talking, I grew up with zero money, but I wasn't on the street. I had no idea we didn't have any money. I thought we were rich as heck. My grandpa used to make me toys out of wood. I thought I was the luckiest kid ever because we could go out into the garage and my grandpa would make me whatever the heck I wanted. I I lived with frickin' Santa Claus, man. I mean, I didn't know. I had no idea of concept of money. We had this huge garden, and my grandma grew all this organic food by today's standards, And I would go out there and grandma would say, "Pal, go pick me a handful of beans for dinner. Or go get grandma 2 sprigs of dill. Or go get grandma some chives." And we were literally eating this amazing food. And so I just figured we were rich. I didn't know. So here's me with this background, little kid from Montana, asking my friend, how does $2.5 million feel like no money? And my friend proceeds to tell me that their mortgage is $50,000 a month. And their car payment is around $5,000 a month. And they go on and on and on. And pretty soon I'm recognizing that this person has all these other businesses and other things. So their overhead basically was around $200,000 a month. So this individual basically had lost their savings and maybe had 5 or 6 months of just bare living, of whatever left, which still sounded pretty good to me. It wasn't quite paycheck to paycheck. And then they went on to talk about this business loan that they had. And basically, I'll save you all the numbers, but pretty much it came down to that $2.5 million was going to last them about a month and a half. And so, that would be the equivalent of, somebody's paycheck being lost out the window or something, right? And I just sat there because, again, this person had no hope to get through that situation. And they were kicking themselves about trusting this other individual and blah, blah, blah. So when we talk about hope and how hope is going to save the world, it is really important to talk about the fact that we lose hope all the time. Because we seem to think that hope is this weird low-hanging fruit that we only pluck from the tree when absolutely everything is going perfectly. Now, I want you to think about this, okay? Think about this analogy. So let's think of hope as a pear, and it's hanging low on the tree. And as long as we can see 1,000,000 other pears on the tree, we believe hope exists. Because we can walk up to the tree and pluck some hope down, and we're cooking with gas, and it's awesome, right? When we start to really get a hiccup in our get along with hope is when there's only one more pear on the tree, and we pluck it, and we eat it in that moment, and we are fulfilled with hope, and our tummy is full with hope, and that's great, and we go back to get more hope off the tree, and there's not one pear. And what do? We collapse on the ground. We gnash our teeth. We cry and we say, "Hope is gone. There is no more hope." Instead of just saying, okay, well, geez, maybe I should check the top of the tree. Maybe I should check the inside of the tree. Maybe I should just take a walk around for a couple of weeks until more hope blooms. Maybe I should have some faith there's going to be more hope. But no, we expect the hope to be low-hanging, where we can feel it and taste it and have it serve us, have it fill our bellies with something. That's what we want. We want that hope so badly. Okay? And I threw down a pretty gritty, wretched example of sexual abuse as something that can take someone's hope at an early age, because it's true. And when we have financial duress, it's so hard for so many people to amass any sort of money at all. My friend was a professional entertainer in the film and television business. So over many years, they had amassed this, $42.5 million, 40 of which they lost. Yet it took them a long time to build that money up. It's not just like, oh, gee, I won the lottery. Here's my $40 million. So the fear that all the pears were gone off the tree, that's how we look at hope. So when these angels talk about hope saving the world, That really kind of starts to put it into perspective for a minute, because in order for the hope to save the world, we must be able to find the hope. We must be able to access the hope. We must hold a space for the hope, even if we don't see it hanging low on the tree saying, hey, go ahead and pick me. Fill your belly with me right now. And that step requires a temperance of thought. That step requires patience. That step requires not just collapsing on the ground because we're not mainlining hope right when we want it. We can't just eat the hope off the tree. And it requires holding a space for the growth of hope in us. It also requires perhaps us planting our own crop of hope. Because now think about this. Have you ever heard the term false hope? This gets really deep. Oh, this is fun, gang. I'm so glad we're doing this. Okay. Have you ever heard the term false hope? I have been asked, I can't tell you how many times in my work with angels, I have been asked so many times, doesn't it bother you that you may be giving false hope to people with these angelic readings and these angel messages? Because, bad things happen. And what if you're passing on false hope? Let me tell you something. There is no such thing as false hope. Hope is as it does. Okay, I'm going to go off Forrest Gump on you for just a second. Hope is as it does. Hope generates more hope. It's like an alternator in your car. Okay, an alternator, as long as it's running, generates electrical current, which fuels the alternator, which generates electrical current, which fuels the alternator. So your car alternator is almost, not quite by its true definition scientifically, but it's almost a perpetual motion device. Okay, it's not exactly because of how it works with electromagnetism. However, it creates the current that it eats, that it creates, that it eats. That is hope. So it is impossible for me or anyone else to give false hope to someone, because the action of hope creates more hope, which feeds the hope, which creates more hope, which feeds the hope, which creates more hope. Now, we might run into some disappointing outcomes. We might run into a situation that doesn't turn out the way we wished it did. However, the outcome has no flipping bearing on the metaphysical periodic chart value of hope in the metaphysical universe. That just means that we're bummed. That just means we're disappointed, or maybe a little butthurt, or a little freaked out that things didn't turn out the way that we wanted them to turn out. Yet, disappointment and false hope are different things, because hope generates more hope. Now, this is where we're going to get really down the rabbit hole here. We've been taught that if something disappointing happens when we are hoping for a separate outcome, that the disappointing thing that happened should negate the hope. And we are taught that it is discernment and it is smart for us to disregard our hope and to not hope anymore because of the disappointment, because we need to control our pain. So we're going to control the disappointment by deciding that the disappointment that we feel is because we had hope in the first place. So now we've got something to blame in our need to direct our discontent and to control our pain and to control the disappointment or the level of the pain. So now we're blaming hope for the fact that the outcome was not as we had seen fit. Okay, these are two different issues. However, hope is the fertile ground in which all possibility blooms, gang. In metaphysics, hope is the same principle as positive affirmations or manifestations. Hope is the same periodic element on the spiritual periodic table as both of those items, because hope is the ground in which we grow all crops. So, have you ever heard of false soil or false ground or fake earth? I mean, there's astroturf maybe, that fake grass that they put outside in wintry climates like Montana. Yet the false hope narrative is actually the only thing that's false, is the actual narrative. It's a construct that's not true. So when we talk about hope saving the world, what we're talking about is the fertile ground where all possibility and all miraculous action can be planted. We're talking about the fertile ground where miracles are grown. This is what saves the world. And I have had some really in-depth conversations with the angelic realm about the spiritual physics of hope and faith. And faith is a little different than even hope. They're really close. They're right next to each other on the periodic table. Yet hope is even a more heavy hitter, because faith is holding out room or holding a space for something that you can't see, that you haven't yet experienced, yet it's holding faith that whatever the attribute is that you're thinking about, whether it's a job or a God or an outcome, you have faith, or you're not seeing good actions in a person, but you have faith that they're a good person beneath all of their pain and their woundedness. Faith is literally the act of holding a space with an outcome in mind. I have faith he will get better. I have faith I will find a job. I have faith that God is listening to me. Hope has no specific outcome attached to it at all. And really, we should get to the point where faith doesn't either. We can just have faith in the universe for whatever reason, and that falls closer into the hope category. Yet hope saving the universe, if we hold hope, what we're doing is we're saying, yeah, I believe anything's possible. Heck no, sure, things are bad right now. We had a tornado rip our city apart. It's been tragic that we've experienced deaths. It's been horrible. Yet I have hope. I have fertile ground to plant better crops in that will feed the many. I have fertile ground in which to place my awareness, my efforts, my building of something. And it's the fertile ground that I actually have hope in, because I have hope in the spiritual physics of transfiguration, of anything I plant in that ground growing back and being amazing. Now, sometimes we have that hope. We plant those crops of hope, of whatever it is. We sow our seeds. We say, okay, here we go. I'm going to put like my friend who lost $40 million freaking dollars. Oh my God. Look at that. They had a lot of hope that was going to make them a ton of money. And then it all went bye-bye. So that person could easily say, I have no more hope in the financial situation, the financial institutions. I have no more hope for people who invest money. And it's literally saying, I believe that all the soil is now sour. I believe there is nowhere that I can grow a miracle crop. And I'll tell you what's hard about that, gang. You know, if you've had a severe disappointment, I know I've had many in my life. Holy buckets. I've had disappointments that hit me in such a way that they have sucked the air out of my lungs because of how hefty they were. I mean, I think we've all been dropped to our knees by life a few times with things that we just weren't expecting, that were lessons about our resilience and our ability to overcome, and our ability to be able to find that fertile field within us and plant another crop. But boy, is it hard, isn't it? Man, it's hard. So this is why hope saves the world. Because to truly hold a place for hope, we go beyond faith. We go to a place where we just go into a concrete co-creation of miracle growth. And understanding that soil within us, where we grow everything, is never going to go away. And there's always going to be more. There's always going to be more. Okay, maybe somebody comes with a dump truck and puts really gross oil tailings all over our field, and that wrecks our hope for that field. Yet having hope in the soil is understanding that we will have a way, a means, an outlet, a direction, a gift, an awareness, a finding of another patch of soil in which to grow something fabulous. That is hope. So when we give up hope, we are telling the universe that one of the most weighted and powerful spiritual elements on the metaphysical spiritual table, right next to love, isn't real. Literally. So the universe is looking at us like, okay, that's jacked up, all right? Because it is real, man. And just because you believe it's not there doesn't mean it's not there. I mean, okay, there is no spoon, but come on. Just because you believe it doesn't exist doesn't mean that that fertile field isn't there. It just means you're no longer seeing it. You're no longer looking for it. You're covering your eyes with your hands because of the pain that you've experienced. And the idea of growing a brand new crop after all the work that you put into the previous crop that maybe got dumped on by the cruddy oil company who cut right across your land inside of yourself, you're protecting yourself from disappointment. So you say, I have lost hope. Because remember, when we decide not to engage the energy signature of hope, we are controlling our pain. We are controlling what we feel is disappointment. It's kind of like, those folks who are hooked up to those morphine machines and they can push as much morphine as they need into their system. And when they do that, it basically they're in control of how much morphine they get. We're in control of how much hope that we're going to put out into the universe. We're in control of how much hope we believe, how big our field is, how big our field of hope is. We are in control of that. And that is pretty amazing. So we talk about these principles, and many of our first reactions come from a place of pain. And believe me, our pain wants a place to live. It does. Every energy signature is alive. It wants to stay alive. So our pain will fight to have a place within us, just like any other living thing will. It's going to fight to have its relevance in your personality. If a person has gone through demoralization as a young person, let's say with some horrific sexual abuse, and they don't have a hope that there is any safety for them in the world, and as an adult, they are shown tools, they are shown compassion, they are shown a lot of different modalities through which they can engage and begin to heal. Yet they themselves, maybe at different times in their development, started to heal, wanted to heal, and then something fell on their head that was hideous and knocked them down into a terribly painful place all over again. It is easier to control the narrative to say there is no hope. I have no hope of anything. I will remain eternally disappointed. And in order to remain eternally disappointed, which is really interesting, folks who truly have really given up hope, which is pretty rare. Most people have a secret hope patch in their backyard that they don't tell anybody about because they don't want somebody to accidentally back up their garbage truck and dump a bunch of oil tailings all over their precious space. So most people have a little garden patch of hope within their soul somewhere that they keep secret. Yet I've met a couple people who have had such rigorously terrifying things happen to them that they have truly given up hope that people are good, that there's any good in the world, because it's never once been their experience. So when they do experience goodness, when they do experience kindness, when they do experience healing, they don't trust it. I mean, why would they? Their whole life's been a bucket of poo. And so they back off of it. They think it's a lie. They don't want to engage it. They don't want to give the trust out to it in order to really even open the gateway to the hope patch that could be within them. And that's tough. That is really tough. And I have so much empathy for folks whose lives have robbed them of their trust. And again, of course, yes, metaphysics dictates that we are ultimately responsible for our choice making. Of course we are. Yet let's have a little empathy for people whose lives were so hard and so terrible. Perhaps they were victimized at such a young age that the idea of trust is just like the idea of having $50 million. I mean, it's way out there. because why would I trust life? Now, most people, most of us have not had that very difficult learning path. So most of us aren't coming from such a severe situation. Many are, yet most are not. And I only see that through the ethers. There are some whose lives, gang, man, if you think you have a bad life right now, I tell you what, there are those whose lives I start to look into and I just can't because it's so painful. It's painful as an empath. It's painful as someone who speaks with their angels. I mean, if they need help, heck yes, I'm going to come right in there and help them out to the best of my ability. Yet when we talk about hope and hope saving the world, really what we're talking about is allowing people the inner safety to go find that secret hope patch in their backyard that they've not told anybody about and grow a dang crop that will benefit the world. And if it gets hailed on, go ahead and have the grief, have the disappointment, be sad, yet go ahead and rotate to the field next door and plant another crop. Because what we're taught is a limitation consciousness that says, hey, guess what? You've only got one postage stamp sized soil plot in your backyard. And once that's done, it's done. We're taught the one pear theory. That once the last pear is gone, that's it. Tree's not going to grow any more pears. Hope is over. If you can't feed yourself with the hope, you sure as heck can't grow it yourself because guess what? If it can't be proven to you, then there's just no hope. And we seek proof. We seek proof of why we can trust the universe, don't we? Isn't it weird? Oh, we know we can. We know we can trust the universe. I'll tell you who we generally don't trust, gang. Generally, we don't trust ourselves. I mean, let's get gritty, raw, real here for just a minute. We generally don't trust ourselves because we've lied, we've cheated, we've exaggerated about our work experience, we've been insecure and done terrible or said terrible things in the moment just to cover our butt. We don't trust that we will do the right thing half the time in any given situation. So why the hell do we trust the universe? If we are supposed to be the hands of the universe, and we are supposed to be what affects the quantum field in the third dimension with our actions, and sometimes we can't even trust ourselves to not just be that lowest common denominator person. I mean, gang, we all have those days. I don't care who you are. We all have those days. Welcome to being a human being. Yet we fear that low bar so much, we fear that low space so much, that we begin to construct the rest of our universe on that projection of not trusting ourselves. Therefore, we don't trust the universe. Therefore, we don't trust that there could be more hope patches or we could ever do it right ever again. And let's not even begin to get rolling on the religious dogma that crushes the dickens out of people's self-esteem anyway, for the purpose of keeping people dependent and suppressed on a mythological version of a God that created them imperfectly and is mad about it. I mean, whoa, that's some heavy stuff. The mythology of that particular being that made humanity and then was so disappointed that they had to be exiled out of a garden. They were so disappointed in their own creation, in this being's creation. And then humans got a hold of that. And we love any reason to hate on ourselves. And we get the whole sinners in the hands of an angry God complex. And did you know that's actually the title? Sinners in the hands of an angry God. That is actually the title of a paper, of a missal, a sermon that was written by the Puritans who formed this country. And how do I even know that? Because my dear friend Joshua Spear, back when we were in our early, barely 20s, like late teens, early 20s, talked me into taking a history of Puritan literature class at 7 frickin' a 7:50, I think, in the morning. And Josh basically bribed me with, he would pick me up for the class and, we'd get a cup of coffee. And this was in college, obviously. And there was a paper that was written called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And it was all about, really the frailty of human beings and how we suck and how God is embarrassed about us. And it was really a sermon. It's a missal. It was a sermon. And it was written by British colonial Christian theologian Jonathan Edwards. And it was preached to his own congregation in Northampton, Massachusetts. It was a little heavy, right? So here we are talking about hope. So when our country was founded on sermons that were sinners in the hands of an angry God, that's a little hardcore, and it was supposed to be teaching people that hell is real and that if they didn't do the right thing, they were going to burst into flames, and you can only have hope through Christ, but barely, because God is really mad at you anyway, so why bother? You can imagine when that is the spiritual DNA on which our country was founded. Okay, gang? I don't think we really pay attention to this when we study American history. As we know in metaphysics, like attracts like in the spiritual universe. So the fact that the United States even exists when our founding people believed that we were literally maggots under the heel of an angry God that at any moment was going to spit us out, then it's amazing we did anything. Our country, of course, was founded also on Western expansion, slavery, victimization of the Native American people. We were European expansion all over the place, getting this country going. So then after that all crunched out and was horrible and started to heal over and still isn't healed if you look at the racism and you look at the awful conditions on the Native American reservations, which are sovereign nations in this country, we begin to see that we've got a little bit of a problem with hope in our country when it was built on the DNA of suppression and limitation consciousness and subjugation. Now, I'm a proud American. I love my country. As a Montanan, we're practically proud Montanans, and then we're a proud American in back of that. However, I realize I'm not an ignorer of history, and I look at the hope that was taken away of our indigenous people and our people of color and the people who were enslaved and the people who came over here and were treated like second and third and fourth class citizens being blown up as the Chinese folks were coming over to build the railroad, and they were the explosive engineers. They dealt with the explosives. And those folks would die all the time as we blew giant caverns through the mountains. But they were making money. So, the avarice of the expansion of this nation also affects our hope. Because what hope is there of having this beautiful world if it's all built on this bedrock of avarice expansion? If the energy of avarice expansion is eating the bedrock of the country. Think about that. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. Creepily, just as a sidebar, I actually had an A in that class until our final. And our final was having to be able to cite who wrote 1 and 2 sentences. It would just be a random sentence. We had to say who wrote it in a book. Pulling it from a book, that thin Bible paper? Our textbook was about 1,100 pages long. And I do not have a photographic memory. So these Puritan folk talked a whole lot alike. They spoke in a very specific vernacular, and everybody sounded the same. And they'd say something rotten about humanity sucking. We were supposed to say what page it came from in the book, who said it, and from what missal or sermon it came from. I failed that, so I ended up getting a C in the class. It was really sad. Anyway, I digress. When we look at hope, it's important to recognize that there are many things that go into eroding our hope, including but not limited to the spiritual physics on which our country was founded. Now, I'm not talking about all the wonderful people that came in to do wonderful things in the nation. I'm talking about sinners in the hands of the angry God. I'm talking about a hopeless culture. and the people who came over here and brought slaves who had a hopeless lifestyle. What were you going to hope for? So when we talk about finding our hope center and why it's going to save the world, we're talking about healing our genetics. We're talking about generational healing. We're talking about healing the land on the East Coast and on the West and everywhere where all this blood-soaked avarice behavior ate our nation from coast to coast. I believe, and I may be off on this, but I believe it only took 80 years to close the country from the East Coast to the West Coast with the railroad. It was something ridiculously short, like we did it within 100 years. And it was because of the railroad. So we literally shored up our entire country and boxed it in, began to put we began rounding up the indigenous nations here and shoving them on reservations, taking away any sort of natural lifestyle, giving people vouchers for crap like lard and sugar and flour, and took the purpose away from these incredible Plains Nation indigenous nations who followed the buffalo. They followed the bison herds. They moved. And then we fenced everything in and we killed the bison. I mean, we crushed a continent here in the name of Western expansion. Manifest destiny. So when we talk about the loss of hope, gang, we are talking about a lot of energy for the last many hundreds of years, here in the United States anyway, that have gone into the ground, into our DNA. Because let's not forget that in our DNA, we've got those 12 strands, and then it doubles up and you got 21. And the first 2 strands of the DNA are the strands of DNA that deal with the body. They're the RNA proteins that we go to fix a broken bone or heal a tumor, anything else. Those remaining 10 below, those remaining 10 rungs on the DNA, science calls that junk DNA until recently. And I'm going to back up a bit. Those of us that work in this metaphysical field, we've been talking forever about the fact that that's not junk DNA. It's just that it's not responding to chemical triggers. It's responding to resonance triggers. It's responding to vibrational cues. So here we are in the metaphysical community talking about how that's not junk. It's just waiting not for a chemical cue, yet for a vibrational cue to send forward into the body messages of healing, transfiguration, and incredible spiritual power. So our hope mechanism, our hope keeper is our DNA. That same hope is also what is going to allow us miraculous physical healings. It's going to be the fertile ground in which we plant beautiful co-creative ideas. And it exists in our DNA, yet so does trauma. Okay? So the reason I let out with this, and this is heavy and crazy, and I know we're kind of all over the place, but we're kind of not, because it's all the same tight braid down the back of life here, is that we are dealing with an energy signature here that we have been taught by the oppressive regime of sociopathic consumerism. We have been taught that if we can't see the hope, it's not there. Because the minute we start engaging the hope that is the fertile soil within us, the minute we start doing that, the minute we start not looking at that pear tree going, oh, well, no more pears. I guess it's only the last pear's gone and we're never going to have a crop of pears again. The minute we stop doing that and say, I am so excited for the next crop of pears, those pears are going to grow 19 times faster. Because here's what happens with the spiritual chemistry of the fertile ground of hope. When you plant anything in hope, it begins growing exponentially. So the more hope you water it with, the faster it grows. The more pure the hope is distilled through the portal of love in your chest. And you think of yourself like a maple tree. You know how in the the northeast of the United States, they tap maple trees and they just basically put a spigot in the tree and they open up the tree spigot and they take the running sap out, and that's syrup. That's maple syrup. It comes straight out of a tree onto your pancakes. That's it. So I want you to think about the most pure hope that you can distill coming from your heart. And it's hard, gang. It's hard to not run every single disappointment we've ever had right in front of our eyes and say, I'm not going to let the sap of love run through my tree trunk. Are you kidding me? Because really, if you think about a tree, if you think about a maple tree, that sap's got to run down into its roots, and it's got to stop running before the really cold weather hits. Otherwise, if the sap is running when the really, really, really cold weather hits, the sap expands in the tree and it cracks the tree trunk and the tree dies. So there are certain times to harvest that maple syrup, and it's during the sap running periods, and you don't want to go do it in the middle of winter because you're going to get a whole lot of nothing because the sap's just waiting in the roots. It's a little dormant there. I mean, not all of the sap, obviously, but most of that sap has run down and is waiting in dormancy until spring comes. So a lot of times, we're trying to tap our hope center at the wrong time. We might be having a deadly, freezing, 45 degree below zero winter of the soul. And all of our hope sap has drained to our feet because it needs to get out of the harsh climate. And we might be thinking, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and tap my hope right now. But there's nothing to run through the spigot at that moment. We don't have any of the love juice. All the love sap's in our feet to get out of that freezing dark night of the soul. So how do we get the sap to run when we're not feeling it? How do we tap our own hope when we're not feeling it? This is the most cool part of this whole podcast. It's right here. Those lower rungs of DNA can change the season instantly. And so you can do things like meditate. You can do things like listen to Tibetan bowls, monks chanting. You can have certain smells or certain visuals. Again, sound cues are huge that create vibration in the flesh. You can do yoga. You can go and do hot yoga in the middle of winter time if you're able, and begin moving that vibration of the body through. And even if you're in a dark night of the soul, those lower 10 rungs of DNA are going to be they're going to start to resonate, and they're going to start to send cues to your body to start running the sap again, because it's safe, because it's created a bubble literally around you, in essence, energetically, to run that sap in that moment. And that's where you tap the hope. It's very difficult to reach for hope when we are in a position of having none, and we've had none for a long time. That love sap goes right to our feet and we stay dormant. Yet if we understand that taking a few small actions of connection with others will change our seasons energetically for us so that we can start running that love sap again. And I want you to think about this. I want you to think about if you're somebody who's struggling with finding hope in the world, finding hope in government, finding hope in other people, finding hope in what we're going to do for the planet, I want you to think about just sitting there. And I want you to think about your feet as being full of rich, yummy, dark maple syrup. Oh, I love maple syrup. Oh, man. Oh. And I want you to think of your feet starting to warm up. And that syrup gets real liquidy and real runny. And it's beautiful golden dark, that gorgeous amber color, that really good dark syrup is. Oh, I love maple syrup. Wow, I'm hungry. Okay. And then I want you to envision pulling that hope and that love syrup up through the back of your legs. And you feel it just getting your calves all warm, and you feel it tickle behind your knees, and you feel it pulling up those hamstrings and going right through your glutes, and you're feeling this warm syrup, this love syrup moving. Now it's going to kind of switch around, and it's going to go right to your belly button. And it's just this warm, gooey, wonderful, running, liquidy, golden, awesome, yummy, delicious love coming up through your belly button, and it goes up to your solar plexus. And it runs all the way, and it starts filling a tank in your heart chakra. So it's moving up from your feet, and it's just starting to fill that heart chakra. and you can feel the weight of it, and you can feel the glow of it, and you can feel the warmth of it. And it may make you cough. It may make you want to stop the flow because, oh my God, something's in there and that tank's been empty a long time. What's going on? Yet just breathe, big breaths. Big breaths. Let that syrup go all the way to the top. And it's maybe a football-sized tank in your heart chakra. Whoo, and you've got it as full as you possibly can. And some of it starts to kind of back up into your chest and maybe into your throat. And you just stop it at the throat chakra. And just feel that love syrup in there. Just feel that warmth. And you might get resentful. You might get angry that it's there. You might say, where the hell have you been? You might be loving this feeling right now. You don't have to pass judgment on yourself. Just feel it. That big love syrup. Now, instead of pounding a spigot into a tree, in the front of that football that's right in the middle of your heart chakra, there's just a little cap. And so just take a little shot glass there. Go ahead and just uncap that little bit and just let that syrup run into the shot glass. And then whoop, you catch it with the cap. Maybe there's a few drips on the floor. No biggie. It wipes up. Ain't no big thing. It's just love. Okay? And you put the cap back on. And you're looking at this clear shot glass full of pure golden amber love syrup. And then you take this and you look out your window. And there's that little bitty 3x3 patch of ground where nothing's growing. Nothing's growing there. And it's weird because you've landscaped your whole yard, but here's this 3x3 patch. And it's got reasonable sun and reasonable shade, but there's nothing there. So you're thinking, okay, well, I've got a blank patch of dirt in my backyard. I've got this shot glass of love syrup. I'm just going to walk out, and I'm just going to pour this syrup all the way into the middle. You can pour it in a circle. You can pour it in one big blob into your patch. And you're going to close your eyes and open them. And what started to grow, only you'll know this, what started to grow in this vision that you're having in that time that you closed your eyes and opened them? Because that love syrup instantaneously reacts with that patch of hope, with that fertile ground. Maybe it's the beginnings of a new idea. Maybe it's the beginning of a money tree. Maybe it just looks like grass is starting to grow. Maybe you don't even know what it is yet. But leave it alone and let it grow. And understand that the fertilizer for the amazing fertile ground called hope is the love energy within you. And that is infinite, and that never stops, and that continues to run in you always. And now that you ran it up and you've got it in your heart chakra, just notice. So maybe you depleted your tank just maybe by an ounce. Pull more up from your feet. You are a miracle machine. You can keep filling that football tank up with this love syrup because it's the chi of the body. And you can keep pouring that on this fertile ground. Now go back the next day and check on it. And what is it? Maybe it's actually the faith in another person. And you can contact that person and start a new business together. Maybe what's growing in that 3x3 little spot back there is trusting yourself. Maybe it's a version of you that's coming out of the ground that's so excited and so happy and you haven't seen it in years. And you can start to feel the tips of your fingertips again. Hope can't die because it always exists. Love can't die because it always persists. So as you combine these two enormous elements on the metaphysical periodic table, you become the miracle maker, and you become the one who sprouts great ideas, and you become the one to truly trust yourself, and you become the one to go back and keep pouring those shot glasses of love. Heck, if you want to, go over there and put a fire hose on your chest and just spray that whole entire backyard down. Turn the whole backyard into a hope patch. Grow everything, because this is what saves the world. When we no longer look at our outside surroundings like we're sitting here with our hands out, waiting for this giant entity in the sky to drop us some goodness out of nowhere, instead of saying, you know what, I understand I am an active co-creator in this incredible universe. I understand the concept of hope. I understand how to channel love. I get it. I may not know how exactly it works, but I know that my part that I am here to do is to willingly give the love to the hope patch and to begin to continue to water it so that it may grow and grow and grow. And other people will be able to partake in this as well. And pretty soon our hope patches are all overlapping and we have amazing power together. And this is where we get rid of limitation consciousness that says we cannot clean up this planet together, that we cannot get along in government, that we cannot actually heal things from a political standpoint, that we cannot heal communication with family members and with loved ones, and we give away the limitation and the illusion of separation from source for the acceptance that we are the miracle bringers. Because hope is the very foundation on which your feet walk every day. Understand what you are. And I get it, gang. Sometimes we don't feel very hopeful, and that's okay. We can have our rotten days where we don't know what's going on, and we want to pick up a can of worms and eat them. That is fine. Once you got over the gritty, crunchy, snotty grossness in your mouth, remember, hope is as hope does. It is the alternator of spiritual physics. So make sure you're fueling it with all the love you've got. I love you. Go plant incredible crops in the fertile ground of hope that exists within you, and watch that vibration hit the ethers, and watch your situations change. Watch your relationships heal. Watch your work situations elevate. Watch everything shift around you. Because you shifted. And I will see you next week.